Good morning. Welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it's the 19th day of February 2024. And we're going to jump right into our election infrastructure crisis panel right now and go total beast mode. How you guys doing this morning?
Doing well. Thanks for asking.
Thanks for being here. So Jason Ickes, Jeff Buongiorno, and Joshua Merritt. So hey, let's jump right in this, guys, because you always have a lot to talk about. What's going on?
Yeah, well, a lot's going on. Good morning. Thanks for having us on again. We've been on this for a while. In Tucker episode 75, connected a lot of the dots, added a lot of clarity, and I just wanted to keep on pushing this narrative that we need to have some changes before the 2024 election. We know the 2020 election was stolen. We know the 2022 election. A lot of problems in my race, a lot of problems with collusion. I believe we have a conspiracy between our state lawmakers and, potentially some of these organizations that Mike Pence has brought attention to. So that's where we're at.
Here? Would you like me to play a little bit of a clip here, Jeff?
You're the host. Absolutely.
Well, this is your time, so you tell me what you're actually,
That would be a good one. Yeah, if you don't mind playing, there was a segment. If you just want to do the intro, that would be fine. I don't know if you did a promo clip for that interview or not, but
this is what I have. So let's go ahead and play this little.
The defining fact of the United States is freedom of speech. The extent this country is actually exceptional is because we have the First Amendment to the Bill of Rights. We have freedom of conscience. We can say what we really think. There's no hate speech exception to that. Just because you hate what somebody else thinks, you cannot force that person to be quiet because we're citizens, not slaves. But that right, that foundational right that makes this country what it is, that right from which all other rights flow, is going away at high speed in the face of censorship. Now, modern censorship bears no resemblance to previous censorship regimes in previous countries in previous eras. Our censorship is affected on the basis of fights against disinformation and malinformation. And the key thing to know about these is they're everywhere. And of course, they have no reference at all to whether what you're saying is true or not. In other words, you can say something that is factually accurate and consistent with your own conscience. And in previous versions of America, you had an absolute right to say those things. But because someone doesn't like them or because they're inconvenient to whatever plan the people in power have, they can be denounced as disinformation, and you can be stripped of your right to express them, either in person or online. In fact, expressing these things can become a criminal act and is. And it's important to know, by the way, that this is not just the private sector doing this. These efforts are being directed by the U.S. government, which you pay for and at least theoretically own. It's your government. But they're stripping your rights at very high speed. Most people understand this intuitively, but they don't know how it happens. How does censorship happen? What are the mechanics of it? Mike Benz is, we can say with some confidence, the expert in the world on how this happens. Mike Benz had the cyber portfolio at the State Department. He's now executive director of Foundation for Freedom Online. And we're going to have a conversation with him about a very specific kind of censorship. By the way, we can't recommend strongly enough. If you want to know how this happens, Mike Benz, B-E-N-Z, is the man to read. But today we just want to talk about a specific kind of censorship, and that's censorship that emanates from the fabled military-industrial complex, from our defense industry and the foreign policy establishment in Washington. That's significant now because we're on the cusp of a global war, and so you can expect censorship to increase dramatically.
Okay. Do we want to continue playing, or let's?
Yeah. You know what? Can I share and add something to this?
Absolutely.
Right. Let's see. Let's get to.
We build this on the fly, like the Board of Elections in the state of Michigan. They just make policies up on the fly. We're doing this just on the fly, right? Learning from Jonathan Brader at the Board of Elections, just kind of,
Yep. So, I want to share a clip that was pretty famous, and it really has gone by the wayside. So let's see what screen I have up. Okay, good. And let's take a listen.
No
The sound-
audio.
It's there.
We're not getting it on our end.
It's probably going through your
No.
headphones.
All right.
That's the one time Bernie Sanders makes sense.
All right, we got it's dubbed, right? We see.
No, still can't hear it, Jeff.
All right. Well, yeah, I guess we're on a podcast. You have the it is dubbed with the text what they're saying. The audio's on there.
You see the
So
text.
that's Bernie
Yeah.
Sanders saying basically 9 days before the election, he predicted exactly what's going to happen. And he cited the states. He mentioned the time frame it's going to take. It was basically predictive programming to warn us that we're not going to have a election results right away. And he called the whole thing Donald Trump at 11 o'clock will be well in advance. But then all these vote by mail ballots, because Democrats vote by mail, will change the outcome of the election, and then Donald Trump will refuse to relinquish power. So it now if you look back at the Tucker interview and you talk about the Atlantic Council and the Aspen Institute and all of these all of these schemes that went on, it makes perfect sense on how they knew the outcome. And Mike Benz went on to say that 7 months prior to the election, they were already planning for this censorship of trying to stop the delegitimization of the election, and particularly the vote by mail ballots. So
That's
Yep.
all outlined there in the Times article, right? They talk about the cabal and everything to fortify the election, right? That was planned and pre-staged. They had working groups and discussed all the potential different outcomes and how the countermeasures and everything like that. Do you remember that Times article?
Time magazine.
Yeah.
Was it time? Yes.
Yeah.
Not yet. Yep. I was thinking New York Times there for New York Slimes for a second, but yeah. Yes, they did expose that, and it's time's a ticking, folks. And I have a theory on we talked about the 3 legal theories that I have. One was the criminal conspiracy amongst our state lawmakers. So I have a slide deck that I think is pretty interesting. My audience might find this interesting. I want to get it out there on the record, so I will. There's no sound involved, so I don't have to worry about that. Let me present one more time. And go to my slide deck.
The crazy thing about this is that this is so convoluted in how many ways they cheated that it's kind of it should be shocking to everyone, because there's not one way that they cheated. It's like a squid. It's got tentacles everywhere.
It was clearly very well orchestrated.
Yeah, plan. Hey, listen. The deep state had a 4-year vacation when Donald Trump took office, right? A lot of them lost their jobs. They had a lot of time to plan this, and they did. And this is just one.
Somebody planned it.
This is just one microcosm of what I experienced personally. You try to exhaust all redress our grievances, right? I tried and I tried and I tried, and I just got pushback. Well, one of the comments. So this is about my state rep in Florida. His name is Rep Michael Caruso, and it was just so. I was pretty much outraged at his response to the people wanting to return to a decentralization of the vote count, which I think will be monumental to the movement for a free election, and the decentralization of the vote count, and also this really weak law that has been, parroted amongst the states, where you can get a vote by mail ballot in your hand by only providing a 4-digit number, supposedly the last 4 digits of a social security number. And, we know how rampant identity theft is. And so what I found here is, I brought this up. I brought up quite a few things. I brought up ballot harvesting to this state rep. And let's just take a look. This is an actual text that I sent to a state lawmaker sitting in Tallahassee while they're voting on what's known as the Resign to Run bill in April of 2023, which allowed Ron DeSantis to run for federal office. And I believe that a lot of concessions were made in order to give Governor DeSantis his wish, his dream of running for the presidency. And in turn, they sacrificed election security by allowing this law to pass. So
they don't pay attention to laws. It's like if they want to get something done, they just say, that's not a problem. We're just going to rewrite the laws. We'll rewrite the bylaws. We'll do whatever it takes to get it done, because they can. There's no checks and balances. Could you read this out loud for us, Jeff? Because I know some people out there struggle with that a little bit.
Okay, so this is the text on April 25th, 2023 to Rep. Mike Caruso. And I said I transmitted this text. A Haitian couple approached me and offered a deal. And this is in Palm Beach County. For $85,000, they would make sure I won the primary, that they have access to all the Haitians and will, door knock, quote unquote, and make sure I get their vote. They are based in Boca on Federal Highway, next to a church. They run a church, and they also run a Haitian radio station. So his response is, yeah, they do that. Now, Tracy is his wife. Tracy did not play in her city election in Delray. Tracy got no Haitian vote. She lost. So in response, I said the only way to disarm that tactic is getting back to election day voting. And he says, well, I know, but that is the dream. So he's now, ballot harvesting is illegal in Florida. And they have election season, which allows the bad actors time to go and ballot harvest all these votes and, buy votes, $20, $50 from low information voters. And he's presenting the factual information based on his experience with his own wife, who was a candidate. Now, why wouldn't you get up on the floor of Tallahassee and say something? And for months and months, I was, asking him to do this. So here's just confirmation that at 5:07 p.m. on April 25th, that this text was sent. And then here we have Mike Caruso 2 days later with Governor DeSantis in Israel, signing a bill about, this craziness. Hey, I'm all for the Israelis, but, it's another hate speech bill and, hate crime bill. And, as Tucker just said, really, what is a hate crime? Or are the rest of the crimes like love crimes? I don't understand that whole concept. But this just goes to show that here's the date that they were in Israel, and he missed the vote on the floor. So instead of, and I really, I applied a lot of pressure, and I think it was a Tuesday, the 25th. And Rep. Caruso said, well, why don't you come up here Thursday and I'll get you in front of the governor. And guess what? Thursday, they were in Israel. So thank God I didn't travel 7.5 hours to Tallahassee. They wouldn't have been there. So, I don't know how many reps, there's hundreds of reps. Why did DeSantis choose Rep. Caruso? Why did he pull him off the floor? And so he couldn't vote. He couldn't lobby on 70-50 and, pull him across the globe to Israel. So that question begs to be answered. And Mike Caruso said to me, Jeff, it's bigger than both of us. We can't change this. So to me, that's tyranny. Who's pressuring the state lawmakers? And this is why, we know that Mark Elias is going around changing all these election laws. We know about his skiff. We know about his tenure with Perkins and Cooley. And, this is the time is now. But what I want to point out next is, I'm not accusing Rep. Caruso of anything. There's just some questions that need to be answered. And I know this is very specific. This is local to Palm Beach County. But as Liz Harris proved in Arizona before she got thrown out of the state house that these state reps are have a lot of perks, and are they operating with impunity? So this is right off of the Florida .gov website, where it gives the personal information of our reps. And this is Rep Caruso, the same rep who I engaged in that text conversation with, saying occupation, a CPA, he's an accountant. But let's take a time travel back to 2005, where he changed the name of his firm from Caruso and Caruso CPAs, a professional association, or which is the same as a professional LLC, which is really how an accounting firm, specifically who does auditing. Caruso is the chairman of the Florida Audit Committee, and I have a pretty good idea of his business is not specific to general, which is what he changed his corporate amendment to, that he's specifically doing business of a general nature and not accounting, and specifically auditing. And here's some of the legal mumbo jumbo about how you need to be a professional LLC. You just can't be incorporated. And here we have this is from the Florida Board of Accountancy, where Rep Caruso renewed his CPA license, but he didn't for this Inc. And really, this makes no sense. How can you operate as incorporated and your rank is a CPA firm? Now, it could be possible that you just do opinions on compilations of financials, or you just do tax returns, but you can't do auditing, which on his website represents that he does auditing. So this is just one. I decided to dig into Rep Caruso, see what's going on, see why the people have zero traction on any of the election laws, how these weakened election laws are allowed to survive, all of the lobbying that some of these great groups do, like the Republican Liberty Caucus, the Republican Executive Committee, Defend Florida. We just get pushback. We get pushback. Oh, it's bigger than that. It's bigger than you. No, and they tell us leadership. I want to know who is leadership. Is leadership these 51 traders in the intelligence agency? Remember the deck of cards? Is leadership, who is leadership? Leadership's supposed to be the people, and that's not happening. And I have another report on the sheriff. I don't have that deck ready. We'll do that next week. But with that, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Yeah,
sharing my screen.
I think that something that doesn't have the teeth, I think that most people would expect or hope, is the Hatch Act. The involvement of government officials and their toying around in elections and partisan behavior, exploiting their positions for rewards or gain for those who support particular candidates. There's too many manipulative aspects to those positions of power that really are not in any sort of way checked or balanced. And our government is I think too much of it is being weaponized against the American people, and not actually conducting its internal audits and accountability measures. And instead, it has been redirected and focused solely against the American people. And in particular, anyone who is or espouses either the quote unquote MAGA title, the Make America Great Again, or Trump aligned, and the conservative title. And I think that has to do with the fact that they want to keep endless wars going, and they want endless budgets so they can print money in perpetuity to support their own agendas. And it really looks like one of the biggest agendas is a huge distraction away from the fact that China is a threat. And everything is, if you're not talking about Russia, then you're a target.
Well, something else that you said that I think is really, really critical here is that Caruso basically walked away from his duty to do the right thing and stepped forward. And this comes down to individual choices. And I mean, how many times have we seen people that have used excuses for, oh, this is bigger than us, we can't do anything, blah, 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 blah. I mean, Nestle kind of did passed the GBI nonsense to the state police who did anything, and then was like, I don't know. Or the sheriffs that I talked to too in the state of Michigan that said, I said, why didn't you arrest Gretchen Whitmer for what she did? And they said, well, this is out of our hands. And you can take that right down to the individual basis on the voter. When the voter knows that there's cheating going on in a certain way, why would they participate with that and or be silent? I mean, this comes down, this entire thing comes down to individuals doing at all levels of government, as well as the citizens doing the right thing, and not just because they say you can vote, by mail. Why would you do that? Because they're cheating that way. Why would you participate in that? And or why wouldn't you come forward and say something? If you see something, you say something, you do something.
Well, a lot of people did say something. Remember, we had all those hearings in Michigan and across the country, but in particular in Michigan, we had plenty of people come before the state board of county canvassers, the board of elections. We had people who were testifying before the state legislator. And if you recall, there was lots of people who were blowing the whistle. What happened to them was exactly what we're addressing today, which is that our federal government has essentially been weaponized against those very same people who have been trying to get exposure on exactly what you're talking about. This nefarious machinery that is operating behind the scenes to undermine the integrity of our country. And they blame everyday citizens for exposing it.
Right. But we still have to do that anyway. And it's like, if you see something,
Yes.
you have to say something. And
Yes.
so, you've got a few, you've got some really brave people that have stepped up to talk about it. But that doesn't stop, like say Caruso or Nestle or anybody else, or people that are using the 4-digit Social Security to get a ballot. They're just as guilty as everybody else is, because they've participated in something that's illegal.
So take a look at the screen here.
Evaluation?
So I just want to bring this up real quick. These are the donors in Palm Beach County, okay? And Palm Beach County, I don't know, my town, my little town of Gulfstream is like the 7th highest per capita income in the country. And that's because there's only 500 people in it. I don't contribute to that. I probably bring it down a notch. But this is a very affluent county. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here you have a state rep who's lifetime donations to, this is only Florida donations. This isn't federal. State donate. He's 170,000. He's 7th in the county. Okay, out of the probably, I don't know where Palm Beach County is. It's got to be in the top 10 counties in wealth. But what favors are going on? And I'm not accusing Michael of anything. I particularly think he's a good family man, and on a personal level, he seems okay. But when it comes to politics, I believe that he's fallen into the into the Tallahassee good old boys network, and it's the same thing in DC with my opponent in the congressional race.
Well, Donna, you said that the stuff that they're doing that's illegal, and I think that we also have to acknowledge they changed all the laws so what they're doing is legal. There's so much we have to undo. They created loopholes after loopholes to justify and legalize all of the broken mechanisms in our election system. There is no way mass mail-in ballots should be appropriately instituted anywhere in this world, given the fact that you have no way of verifying who actually completed that ballot on the other end. And when you have degraded signature validation, like was proven in Arizona, that they're essentially just clicking as fast as they can, approving the signature verifications, and at all levels, with very few getting rejected, even the most absurd just dots passing through, not even an actual X. So I think that we do have to fix a lot. There's not just this idea of people committing crimes. They've now legalized things that would otherwise not be seen as good, secure measures to have a trusted election. You just can't trust an election where a blanket number of ballots are sent out. Twice in Michigan in 2020. They sent out ballots because they were wrong the first time, and then they sent them out again. Just a matter of weeks later. You're talking millions of ballots.
So here's the thing, though. You say that these, it's legal, but it's unlawful, and it's repugnant to the state constitution. So
it's unethical. Really, I mean, I guess if you even look at it, even if you use a baseline to make your decisions and say it may be legal, but if it's not, they've made all kinds of things legal, but that's not to take the ethical part out of it. Sometimes you have to use a decision that's ethical and then try to change the laws. Of course, they're not going to cooperate unless you get more people running for office.
Well, I think it's unconstitutional. I think there's an unconstitutional aspect to it. I think that you don't have equal protection under the law, and you're not getting equal representation because you can't guarantee the sanctity of that vote. So I think there's definitely constitutional arguments here at play. And let's face it, they've completely undermined the Constitution in every which way. We're talking about CISA here today, and CISA is completely undermining the First Amendment, freedom of speech. And then we go into the fact that they're screening your tweets and your social media posts to censor you. And is that not unlawful search and seizure? They're going through and seizing essentially your messages that you're putting out in the public domain and basically compartmentalizing you and destroying what you're trying to say. They're taking away your voice.
Well, let's how about Josh? You have I know Josh has a lot of great information. We're talking about CISA, which is the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency that's under the Department of Homeland Security, who the director is under impeachment. So we haven't. March 8th is the appropriations for the funding of CISA. So I've been on Matt Gaetz and Brian Mast to figure out a way how to defund them through the 2024 election, and they're saying it's not possible. We can't do it because there's too many rhinos. And I said, well, I actually sent Matt Gaetz a text saying, well, yeah, I agree. I gave him an argument, and he said, well, that argument would fail. And I said, yes, because the rhinos need CISA to stay in power. And he responded, yes, it's treasonous or traitorous. It was his exact text. So to me, that's an admission that they know it's going on.
The one thing I think we've learned in our generation is that the more government that exists, the more problems that we have.
Absolutely.
The largest employer in the United States is pretty much becoming the United States government, and they're finding every reason and validation for them to exist. So it's that old saying of, if you train to be a hammer, you see everything to be a nail. And that sort of caveats with what Jason was talking about earlier, where our government is trying to find reasons for them to exist. It's like we're all in a abusive relationship, and the United States government is gaslighting all of us into, see, this is why we need to take everything from you because we have to protect you, even though we created all of this chaos. And to what you were talking about earlier, I briefed John Ratcliffe back in 2019 before he became the director of national intelligence about what we saw in 2018's elections and just the early precursor, not even to the level we know now, but a lot of the vulnerabilities and problems that we saw in 2018. And not even joking, John Ratcliffe looked at me in the face and said, yeah, we know these problems exist, but there's nothing we can do about it. And then a couple of months later, he became the guy who was supposed to be in charge of doing something about it because the election system is considered national infrastructure. So the director of national intelligence is in charge of that system, and he didn't do anything to improve it either. which in a lot of times whenever there's a problem and you expect government to solve it, they just find more ways to befuddle it and waste taxpayer money. That's their one efficiency, is a way to take something that should take $1 to fix a problem and turn it into a $25 solution. What I was talking about earlier, sort of one of the things whenever I wrote my overall report about the 2020 election, I affectionately called it the business plot of 2020. And it's a spinoff of something in history that's sort of been covered up. And back in 1933, one of the Marine Corps' most famous generals, you learn about it when you go to MCRD, you learn about this man from day one. His name was Smedley Butler. Smedley Butler is the only human being who ever received 2 medals of honor because he was such an awesome human being. And he was approached by businesses in the United States in 1931 that they wanted to overthrow the United States government. And they wanted to put in a fascist government. This is the very beginning of what Germany was doing throughout Europe. And they were trying to make it a global event. And the fascists were going through U.S. businesses to try and overthrow the United States government. Smedley Butler, who wasn't a dirty traitor at the time, decided to play Columbo and investigate who the very top, the decision maker in the whole circles were. And when he got to the very top, he found this congressman from California by the name of Prescott Bush.
Yeah.
And so he went, at the time, we used to have a department in the House of Representatives called the House Committee of Un-American Activities. And they would investigate internal threats to our republic. And Smedley Butler gave a briefing and explained what all he had found. The media was actually on Smedley's side, but it turns out there were so many congressmen and representatives that were bought off on the idea. Their talking point was they called Smedley Butler a conspiracy theorist. They said he was crazy and they tried sweeping it under the rug, while most of the media was saying, hey, there's a huge problem here. So fast forward all the way up until 2020, we know who the brainchild for the 2020 election theft was, and that was the head of the AFL-CIO. He bragged about it in Time Magazine whenever he talked about the plan for all of these groups to come together. And a really good individual up in the north who was defending and trying to stop a lot of this was Phil Klein. Phil Klein was going after a lot of these companies prior to the 2020 election, and a lot of these things that were going on, the lawfare to be able to change laws that would allow the drop boxes. What we were finding from Mark Zuckerberg, how he had put $500 million into the election system, which right now he's bragging about putting another $700-800 million into the election system. And that's where, when you look at it, really what you have is you have one party where one side poses to be in opposition, which claims to be the Republican Party in general. But I think they said they have maybe a couple of $1 million in holding, where the Democrat Party has the whole of government, has the whole of industry. All of the major corporations in the United States are putting money in because it's an ideological warfare. And this is where, one really good, even though I have a lot of back and forths about different people, one really good thing that someone has focused on was Flint's focus on 4th, 5th, and 6th generation warfare, because we're watching how that's working on the citizenry level right now. That's where, like what Jason was talking about with the censorship and the disinformation ops, we're watching military operations that are taking place against the population, where ultimately by the time you get to 8th generation warfare, the plan is to never lose a body on a battlefield, but instead to go after autonomous systems, computer systems, robots, that kind of stuff. So as we're morphing, leading up to the global war on terrorism, we were still in 3rd generation warfare. Fourth generation warfare started becoming more of an issue when global war of terrorism was thrust upon humanity, where now you had the propaganda wing, you had the cyber side coming into play, where cyber attacks became a thing. That's where Anonymous sort of became, I think, a test bed for how cyber operations would end up starting to affect humanity. And so now you almost have to go to, it's like the United States government, whenever we went to space, we were trying to find a solution for something simple like using a ballpoint pen. The United States government spent millions of dollars researching how we could use a ballpoint pen in space. What did the Russians do? They used a pencil. Just to save time, just to save effort. So in the election system, we're trying to overcomplicate it. If you were to flow chart all of the different means and methods that are being used within the election system, it's a big spaghetti soup. When in 2005, when I stood in Baghdad in Iraq, when the Iraqi people got to vote, what did they do? They just made everybody dip their finger in ink. So everybody, December and January 05, 06, you see all the pictures of everyone with blue ink on their index finger. Well, it was simple, and there wasn't nearly the amount of issues. And part of the problem is what happens here in the United States affects the entire globe. And so from 2018 on, I started dealing with election investigations globally. I helped in Mongolia. I helped in Uganda. I helped in Indonesia in the dealings with Smartmatic. And we've got all of these systems and all these complications, and the simplest way to solve it is going to be just take it back to the basics. A sheet of paper, a single vote. Because right now, your vote exists up until the point you actually go and take your vote. And once that number goes into the system, you're anonymized. And so there's no tracking. And so, like you were talking about, Jason, you've got accountants, you've got all these people with or Jeff, you were talking about the accountant who is a rep up in your area. Well, elections should be run like a financial audit. But the problem is, I can take a dollar bill and it's got a serial number, and there are tracking systems, and I can track it from cradle to grave. But when a voter goes to vote, there's no mechanism to track who touches your ballot, who counts your ballot, what box it stores in. And there's supposed to be, Harry Howry, whenever he helped write and work on the HAVA Act, they put those type of chain of custody plans into the system. But when they don't follow the plan, when they thwart it at every chance, and now you've got adjudication where election companies can go in and say, that undervote and that overvote, we want to capture it and go with what we believe the voter's intent was. But there's no tracking to ensure it's not abused. And we know it was abused. And we know it, especially with mail-in ballots. And there's a gentleman, I won't say his name, there's a gentleman who took my little video that I had gotten that showed some intel that I had received in November of 2021 that showed exactly how the absentee ballots were forged. And we can see they were using SQL map. They were going into the federal absentee ballot sites and extracting names. One state, you see a folder with 134,000 falsely generated absentee ballots. And then you look at the op orders, and that was the other piece that I've held on to. You look at the op orders and you see their exact plan. So you've got foreign intelligence services that we knew their means, their methods, how they were going to fraud the vote. And instead of, when Ratcliffe was trying to do the third report at the end of 2020 to explain everything, the intelligence community held back their report because they were afraid of how bad it made China look. I'm sorry, but you've got BRICS, you've got China, you've got India, you've got Iran, you've got all these other countries that are in an adversarial posture. And our military is now stuck in a defensive posture. We have no offensive motivation because there's too many people who've been paid off, and there's too many people who are concerned about the BS. That's why no one wants to join the military right now, because you join the military to be a war fighter and put freaking warheads on foreheads and not worry about whether the guy sitting next to you, you didn't call him a she or a Z or any of the other crap, because that stuff doesn't matter whenever you've got to do bad things to bad people. And I'm going to my diatribe on this, but we have to get back to the basics, and all the excuses and all the other stuff that so many politicians are giving. That's all it is. And like so many times I hear them go off on stuff and I want to say 0 meters. An excuse has 0 meters in its capable range. And you're fighting an uphill battle, and nobody, politicians right now don't have the guts to stop and say, we're in an ideological war. First off, people need to shut their mouth. We're not a democracy. We are a republic, because the guys who started this place, when Benjamin Franklin was asked, what kind of government do we have? And he said, a republic if we can keep it. Well, unfortunately, we haven't kept it. So all the blood for the past 250 years that have been spilled, right now, every politician who runs their mouth about that is slapping every one of our brothers and sisters in the face by even uttering those words. And so to fix it, we got to get down to the basics, stop with all of the BS, and realize we're in an ideological war where the left doesn't care what means they use. They will kill, they will destroy, they will do everything they can just because they want power. That's it.
You said something really important, because I think people need to change the way that they look at the world, because human beings typically think that other people think and approach life the way that we do. And when you look at somebody who is, let's just say a psychopath or a bad person, a lot of people can't even relate to the fact that these people are actually think differently than they do. So they don't necessarily see the threat and truly just get in there and handle business, and not try to have this constant justifying what they're doing so that we don't deal with the problem.
Well, it's where too many citizens are giving their blind faith and support to institutions that were once great, but they've turned on us, and it's it's an uphill battle. We're running out of time, and
they've all been infiltrated.
Anybody recruit?
17 taskings in the Constitution. That is all the federal government is mandated, is 17 taskings per the Constitution.
I thought there were 18 enumerated powers.
I think 2 of them are similar. My apologies.
So when
the thing I'd like to point out is, you brought up earlier that the appropriations for CISA is going to be on the 8th of March. I've already heard rumors in back channels that there's a possibility that our power grid will be attacked shortly thereafter. And I don't know if that was rumit that was created because CISA wants to make sure that they get their funding continued. Who knows? Because it seems like a really opportune time, if they don't get funded, that all of a sudden we have our power grid go down, or we start experiencing significant attacks simply because they can't operate to quote unquote secure our information systems. Now, obviously, DOD should be doing their job within their systems. Private corporations and entities should be doing their jobs. The fact that we have to rely on a government entity to ensure the integrity of our information technology systems, I think that we are proving that we're falling into this communist, fascist model of relying on the big brother or the government for everything.
No, it's funny you say that, because one of the headlines on the ticker is that the grid is overburdened, and I think the people could take down the grid themselves. They just have to charge their Teslas all at the same time, and that's it's down. it hits 40 degrees in Texas. Everyone charges their Teslas, and then boom.
Well, look at the other date. I find this real significant. On the 11th of March is when I believe the banking system is going to be having some major changes, and they're stopping like the short term loans, which it seems like there's a lot of stuff coming to a head here, in kind of a perfect storm. And so I don't know. I think we've got some real interesting times ahead of us.
That's right around Super Tuesday, isn't it?
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, there's a lot going on right there. I mean, I think the next couple of weeks is a real good idea for everybody to take some time, some soul searching time, and perhaps do a little bit of prep work for what happens if this power grid goes down, or the banking system goes down, or the election systems go down, or we have a crash. I mean, there's a ton of evidence that things are coming to a head.
Well, I think right now what the people can do is start calling their reps and
Get involved.
the fund CISA. I mean, that CISA really irks me, to say the least. And we know Chris Krebs, we know they're censoring, and like I think Mike Benz said it best. The defending is the judge and the jury when it comes to CISA, right? These are the bad guys. They censored us. Chris Krebs flat out lied, saying that the 2020 election was the most secure election in history. And, just for that reason alone, that they basically control all of the DNS root zones for all of the local voting jurisdictions. They can load this warp client by Cloudflare, because they're all using Cloudflare as a DNS, and it can't stand. We can't let that happen. It's just, the writing is on the wall, and we do see some movement by the people, but it's just not enough.
Well, and that lawsuit that they just talked about that came out from the America First Project, and I believe Mike Benz also helped on that, where they found that report from CISA about their meeting in March of 2020. And we've got a name list of all. I included it in our group, but there's a name list that's included in that. You've got Secretary of States from all across the country. You've got CISA. You've got the National Association of Secretaries of States. You've got NIST. You've got Microsoft. Basically, every group that was involved, even everyone's favorite name from other election systems. You see all of these key individuals that are in this list. And they were starting going back in March and planning what was going to happen.
That's the Integrity Initiative, right?
Correct. Yeah. And we know you've got the Election Task Force, which was run by James Baker, who was James Comey's attorney, who was sort of the overlord of all of the 2020 election plans, not just the fraud itself, but then all of the lawfare. Because it was a three-phase operation. It was the lawfare, it was what was going to happen in 2020, and within that, you've got three portions: the electronic intelligence, all of the websites and the vulnerabilities that could have been exploited, the cyber side, as well as the human intelligence side. Because one of the other portions that hasn't really been hit on is all the staffing agencies who were putting people into the central count that you can't get their names from a FOIA request. And most of them were coming from groups like Obama for America, Indivisible, Antifa. And we know because we found a lot of them bragging about it online. And since none of these issues had been fixed, these are all going to be key things to watch for 2024. Who's actually working in the central count? Because what was it they brag about? It's not who casts the votes, but who counts the votes. And even the resident in chief talked about that himself. It doesn't matter what your vote is. It matters who's counting your vote as to what the end result is. So, you know, the few people who've actually been keeping the election integrity stuff going, and as much as I have the previous issues in beef, you know, Mike Lindell's been one of the only people who had the freaking intestinal fortitude to put his butt on the line and put money out there. But all of the other supposed Republican business owners, it was the Bernie Marcus from Home Depot. You had all of these. I remember in 2018, I was having meetings with guys like Gentry Beach and a bunch of other high value business guys in Dallas. And what did they do? They sat on their butts. And I think that's the other key part is people need to get off the freaking bench, because right now the Democrats are operating like a foreign intelligence service. And most people who are claiming to be Republicans, most of the rhinos and everyone else, they're just sitting back. Like, was it Ronna McDaniel? They took in like $300 million. Nothing got done with it. And she was getting limousines, flowers, and freaking
Botox.
Yeah, that was they raised $300 million for election integrity, and we don't even know where all that ended up. And we had people like Matt Seyfried say, you know, he was going to have the largest team of attorneys to respond to issues at the polls, and here we are years later, and we're still looking for attorneys. Republican parties are in disarray across the country. If we had had those resources properly allocated, we wouldn't be in such chaos and turmoil. But, you know, something that to go back to what we were just saying about or what I had mentioned about the appropriations on the 8th and the power grid being knocked out. In 2022, we had several low-level attacks on the power grid that were direct physical attacks, not, you know, the cyber side aside.
In the Carolinas, right?
North Carolina, but also 4 in Washington State. There were attacks on substations around the country, and it was like a probing attempt to see what the response would be and how long it would take. And to my knowledge, and I may be wrong about this, but I haven't seen or heard anything about any arrest on those. And it's much like the Roe v. Wade leak or the bomber on J6. All these investigations that should have, for, you know, serious terrorist like activity that you would want people to have closure on, and instead they get completely swept under the rug, never to be heard from again. And we've got, you know, what is it, 30 tons that went missing of ammonium nitrate between Wyoming and California. And you've got the attacks up in Washington. Meanwhile, you've got the border wide open, and you've got floods of military-age males coming across. We have a powder keg in this country, and the appropriations for CISA being $2.5 billion, and they're holding Congress hostage about it. I think we really need to reevaluate who's really in control here and what they're really trying to do, because at the end of the day, it looks like a hostile government holding the people hostage.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I tell you what, this is something that people don't even realize is happening in the United States. But we only have 3 different systems of regions for power. We've got the Eastern, the Western, and Texas is on its own. And there are 12 critical substations or stations across the United States. If they took 9 of them out, we're done, because it could take years to get this back. What's that?
It takes 3 months just to get them shipped. It would take.
Well, and the problem
months.
with that is that all of this stuff comes from Germany. To even know that we've got replacement parts, or to be able to have even the funding, because the funding is just it's insane.
Some of them actually come from China. That's Siemens is the German, the larger of the two,
right?
But
Siemens
the other one is a Chinese manufacturer. So I mean, if we're at war with China, They're not sending
Good
us.
luck. Yeah, good luck getting parts from them, right? And or being able to get the nation back up and working again. And this nation has never gone from a complete black start, because you have to have power to restart. They will take power on different parts of the grid to restart other parts of the grid. We've never gone, and we've never tested it. We've never had a complete black start in this nation. So we're kind of at a power. And this is the problem that I personally have with all of this centralization of power, the grid. If you honestly, the petroleum fuels and such, because I refuse to call them fossil fuels because they're not. And so if you go from the petroleum focused economy to an electric grid, you are using all of these fuels that we have to burn anyway to make the electricity. But I think that the main goal here is to centralize the power grid in order to interrupt any distribution. Okay, so like if you have petroleum, you can distribute it to gas stations, to local entities in a way that there could be a lot of other means to get it there. When you got a dependent power grid, it's a monopoly at the in the end of the day. When you look at it, it is kind of a monopoly on the distribution systems. That's the key there is the distribution systems. So now if we're coming up on a period of time in the beginning of March where all of this stuff seems to be coming to a head, all I have to say to everybody is I hope you're a little bit prepared, because think about everything that would depend on a system like this if a system went down. Where are you going to get the water? How are you going to deal with sewage? How are you going to deal with communications? It's so dependent. And I think everybody could use a little bit of thought time, a little process into truly putting some prep time into those things that we have come to think will always be there, because there may come a time where they're not there. And it's a volatile time we live in, so we have to kind of take it upon ourselves to take some preparatory action. How's that for a statement? It's really when you see what it takes to redirect resources within a power grid, how amazing this really is. On a good day, when you don't have a black start and you have a regional issue like you're talking about there was a big one up by the Toledo and Cleveland. There was a huge problem up there years ago, and I kind of studied that a little bit to see how they actually brought that all back online. But it was a cascade of power outages that kept going further and further and further, blowing transformers and all that sort of thing. So it really did. It was amazing to watch how it was brought back up. The entire United States, it would be a real problem.
It would be. And, we don't have the interpersonal relationships that we used to have because of the internet. People don't have very tight connections as much as they used to in their local communities. And if the power grid were to go out, they would have no idea where to turn to. How many people don't have access to a hand crank radio or a battery operated radio? Where are you going to go to get food when your grocery store is empty? How are you going to know what is going on? Are you going to go to the local library? If you had the connection with your church, and the church industry in the United States has kind of collapsed after COVID because they went along with all these mandates and whatnot.
They proved that they are an apostate and name only church at this point in time. Now that's not all of them, but a lot of them did. When they closed their doors to those mandates, they cowered. They did exactly the opposite of what the church should be doing. And the church should be the safe spaces. It should be standing up when rights are being violated and protecting and defending, not just sitting there with Gentile Jesus with a lamb on his foot, and afraid to say anything or do something. It was an abomination to watch what the church did. And God Almighty said in the end times, it's going to be the church that's going to get cleaned out first.
Well,
And
people,
looked
people
at
forgot about things like the Black Robe Regiment, who
right.
helped build this republic. And every one of George Washington's first soldiers wore a swath of their pastor's robe who was dead. They all took a swath of it and put it on their uniforms because it was the pastors who built up those militias and those groups to build this republic.
And speaking of militias in the church, back in those days, they would ring the bell at the church and people would know to rally at the church. And if you had to muster a local militia of men to respond to an incursion by a foreign adversary or an Indian raid or you name it, they used the church as the rallying point. And now, where's our rallying point? If the power grid goes down, where's your rallying point? Who are you going to rely on? Who's the battle buddy who's going to be on your left and right to protect you from rogue invaders or marauding gangs or mischievous? There is no real rallying cry now. An organization over the weekend that I got introduced to was the Gideon 300 here. And that's a group of men that are looking to do just that, is provide that resource, that rallying cry.
Help me get them on, Jason, because that's a big deal. And on behalf of the United States and all the women in the United States who are real women, not confused, bring on the toxic masculinity and handle the business. Because you know what, we need more guys that are going to handle business and not just sit there and sit there with their finger up their nose, trying to pacify everybody. Because you know what, it's like I gotta tell you, I'm just saying it, you guys do your thing. God created you that way, and handle it. And there's going to be a lot of us that are going to be like, go, bring on the toxic masculinity.
I posted an article on my Facebook not too long ago about two things, and one of those is the cottage industry, and the other one was spin farming. The cottage industry, back in the day, you were able to produce everything in a village that you needed, for the most part, with the exception of maybe some metal goods if you didn't have access to
decentralization.
Right. And so if we get back to being able to do that, 3D printing is opened up so many opportunities. It is a phenomenal skill set that people could really use. And then being able to take advantage right now while you can with AI to learn and rapidly advance your understanding of certain skill sets is very convenient at the current moment. But if everything goes down, the power grid goes down, those resources, those tools, AI enabled tools won't be there. So
explain how you would go about with the AI to learn that. And I've got my next guest I need to bring my next guest on in a minute, but let's quickly go through that a minute. How would you approach that?
Oh, you know what? I'm going to let Josh do. Josh, this is your cup of tea.
Well, and the good part about what you were talking about, Jason, is really when you start breaking down AI, like today, everyone uses their buzzwords about GPT, Chat GPT, Twitter has Grok. Really, all it is a program called PyTorch, and it's advanced mathematics and a method to learn by analysis. And you can build those locally. Anyone can take a server and put PyTorch on it and have their own instance of AI that they can use, whether you're collecting from the internet or whether you're collecting from your own personal information. But right now, whatever field someone's working in, it used to be like working in networking and cybersecurity. It used to be you were spending all of your time looking at what was posted from previous, like anything you worked on a computer, someone had already messed it up or had an issue with it. So you could just look those up. Well, now with AI, I can go on to Bing's AI. I can go into Chat GPT and I can say, hey, I have an error. How do I correct this error? And it will list out every process and method that you need to do. if you need to write a paper, you can go into Chat GPT and say, I need to write a paper on this. What outline would I use? What research material would I use? And it will go in and lay it all out. So not only can it answer your question for you, but it can teach you the methods, because ultimately, like with military schools and college, all these other places of education, all they're doing is they're teaching you how to do the research. Now you can use AI to be able to direct your capability in research and be able to become focused where you learn your process and your methodology. And then,
Josh, I'd like to have you back on and do another show and just do it like an online tutorial of that someday, so that we can go through that and show people how to do that. In the meantime, I want to bring on my next guest here. So I want to say thank you so much for being on today, guys. You guys are amazing. So I plan on being on again next Monday. I like this panel here. You guys are great. Can you come on, Josh, next week?
Yes, ma'am.
I love that. And then, you know what I'm going to do is I'm not going to schedule somebody right after the Three Musketeers here, and if we can go into pulling up Chat GPT, you can share your screen and let's go in and look how to do this, so we can teach people how to do this and prepare for what is coming. It's inevitable. And if we know that we're going to have, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And so we need to go ahead and prepare for this. But anyhow, thank you so much for this day. And I'll be back in just a minute, guys. You guys have a great day. And I'll be back just a minute with Mark Martino and declare your ballot. This is something that I think is going to really make people happy to see, because this is what we're talking about, is accountability and being able to check and verify what you've done all the way through. I'll be right back. Good morning. Welcome to the second hour of Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it's the 19th day of February 2024. And I want to introduce my next guest, Mark Martino. And he's got this is pretty cool. It's a website called Declare Your Ballot. I want to bring him on right now. Morning, Mark. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Donna.
Awesome. Thanks for being on today. Sorry for the mix-up. I got up this morning and I don't know what it is. I think it's that I've been traveling so much lately that all of a sudden I got up and I'm like, I had it in my mind Friday and I was not connecting the date, but that's okay. We're here. And this is what we do. This is real news for real people, by real people at the kitchen table. So anyhow, let's talk about your site here. I'm going to bring it up, and then I want you to introduce, would you like me to play this video a minute?
Well, I'll explain each one of them. Give you a quick little summary. So what I did is I was listening to the previous conversation, and what I have to explain to you guys today is very in line with what you guys were just talking about. Kind of going back, I was just like you, probably shocked when 2020 happened and saw all the shenanigans with the fraud and all the court cases that went down to nothing, which really was frustrating me, because it wasn't that we didn't have evidence of fraud. It's that we had massive corruption in the judiciary, which before 2020, I didn't realize how corrupt the judges actually were. And so when I watched the Carrie Lake saga back in 2022 go down, and she had massive evidence, watching the judge basically just flat out ignore what was happening, it was very frustrating. Like, for instance, in Carrie Lake's case, she showed that 70,000 signatures were verified in under 2 seconds. Now, to anyone normal, that's impossible. But the judge's ruling was so impossible. It was ridiculous. He said, well, long as the county recorder's okay with 2 seconds, so am I. Well, that's not the law. There's supposed to be signature verification. There was none. So right then I was like, this is really frustrating. I've seen judge after judge after judge just be corrupt. I mean, I'm just going to call out how it is. They're corrupt. Either they're scared of their life or they're paid off financially. I don't know, but the rulings are nonsensical. And so then after 2022 midterms, I was very frustrated with the whole election cycles and all these lawsuits. I was like, look, there's got to be a better way to, in a way, overcome these corrupt judges and to force their hands. And to me, the solution was pretty simple. And I was like, why is no one talking about the solution I'm going to explain to you today? Like this seems really simple, because there's so many ways they cheat, whether they're ballot harvesting or they're just cheating behind the scenes, whether it's computers flipping votes from here to there. There's so many ways they can cheat. So even when you stop one way, they're going to cheat another way. So I was like, we need a new system, a new way to catch them. And another problem is not only you're realizing that judges are corrupt, look at all the legislatures across the country. How many legislatures have actually done anything of substance? Most of them do nothing. I mean, they might pass a little election integrity law here, a little law there, but they're not really going to fix the problem. They're still going to cheat. So I basically was so frustrated. I wanted to get this idea out there. So I basically did 3 videos, and that's on declareyourballot.com. The first video kind of talks through, realizing that there's massive corruption in the judiciary, and we need to find a way to overcome that. So people can, go to that website. They can watch a little introduction to show, what I realized about 13 months ago. If you actually listen to it, then people can view it later. They'll see that my predictions are coming true. And then the second video is really for people who might not understand all the election integrity issues. So I just highlighted 4 major resources people can go to: the 2000 Mules, the Selection Code documentary, the forensic results in Maricopa County, and then the last one just came out recently was State of Denial. I mean, these are things that people can go watch on their own. They're longer formats. They're documentaries. They're an hour and a half, and they can learn, kind of get caught up to speed where we are. Now, I'm going to assume that most of your audience probably knows all this. So
we spend a lot of time, especially on Mondays, going through the elections, because my number one issue is, it's the elections and honest elections, as well as the child trafficking and such. I mean, these are the crimes of our lives that we are going to have to deal with. And so, yeah, I would say that my audience is pretty well versed. But there's always a time where we need to go back to basics and remind ourselves what we learned, because we're getting hit with so much information. It's just boom, 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 boom constantly, that sometimes, it's like being hit with it. And it's like being in a ball crawl with like the balls coming and hitting you from all over the place. And after a while, you maybe lost the focus. And so going back to those basic issues and revisiting them so that you stay on track is incredibly helpful.
Correct. And then the third video is really the solution. So people that understand the first issue, the second issue, they can just go to the third video and see the solution. That's what I'm going to explain to you here right now. So the third video talks about basically we need to realize that the secrecy of our ballot has been weaponized against us. For the first 100 years of our country, we didn't actually have secret ballots. You would go vote and people would see how you actually voted. The problem was that unions and other, let's say, nefarious organizations put pressure on people to vote a certain way, and because you could see how they're voting. So we switched to the secret ballot. But now that secrecy has been weaponized against us, because when they're counting these ballots behind closed doors, once you fill out your ballot and send it in, you don't know if it's actually counted correctly. You don't know what they're doing. So realizing the judges are corrupt, the legislature isn't doing enough. How do you solve that? How do you get around this? Now, everyone probably here agrees that, we should go to 1 day on election, no mail-in ballots, signature verification. I agree with all that. But how are we going to get there when the people running the elections currently are just flat out cheating? You're never going to be able to stop how they're cheating.
As per the law, you are supposed to vote in private, but have the counting done in public. And that's the base law. And when you go back to the Constitution and such and true procedure, that's what they're overstepping. And so it's 1 day voting, vote in private, count in public. And if we don't stick with that, we will never have an honest election.
And we
Paper
probably
ballots
haven't
is
had
really
an
doing
honest
it.
election in a long time.
Yes.
It's been a very
Many
long time.
decades.
It was eye-opening for me because, I didn't believe when all this went down in 2020, I thought, well, you know what, the Supreme Court will step up. They'll do the right thing. They'll listen to the evidence. And even I was surprised, like no standing, like Trump has no standing. The states have no standing. I mean, that's nonsense. That is nonsense. Just so people know, standing is a judicially created doctrine that the judges made up. And this is how it's been evolved. If judges want to hear the case, they have standing. If they don't want to hear the case, they don't have standing. It's been abused by the judges. So one day in the future, hopefully we take away the standing because the Constitution just talks about a case or controversy. That's the standard in the Constitution. There was no standing in the Constitution. So, okay, so how do we do this? Well, realizing the judges are corrupt, the legislature is corrupt, here's my proposal. I call it declare your ballot. That's essentially what you're doing. You're declaring your ballot. So I want people to go in on election day and you vote as you normally would. You then walk out, and then hopefully we'd have an organization ready to go where you have a simple piece of paper. And for instance, it's just something like this. This is we're going to sign basically a jurat affidavit. Now, these are admissible in a court of law. So it's not just an affidavit, it's a jurat affidavit. What's the difference? Well, a jurat affidavit, you actually have a notary part here where the notary witnesses what you did. She witnesses your signature. She gives you an oath saying, do you swear that this is the truth? And, you're going to pledge to that. And then you're going to sign it. But what you're doing is you're just outlining your top level candidates of how you just voted. So this one piece of paper can be used statewide. So I am making it very simple. I'm not trying to get into all the other issues. I'm just going for the president, the senator, the governor, the secretary of state, attorney general. Make it very simple. Another thing, if you weren't able to vote, you can fill this part out where it says I was disenfranchised. The hours were, it was 4-hour wait time. So with this one piece of paper, you're basically going to publicly disclose how you just voted. This then becomes evidence admissible in a court of law. The judges can't ignore this. So what I need people to do is you have to understand these elections are being rigged so that Trump narrowly loses by a very, very small margin. Let's take Arizona, for example. In 2020, Trump allegedly lost Arizona by 10,457 votes in the entire state, over 2 million votes, and a very, very small margin. Because when they rig the elections, they don't want it to be a monumental win for Joe Biden because no one would believe that's even possible. So they always rig it so it's very, very close. So people are like, well, we came close, and that's how they do it. So what you're going to do is when you fill out these affidavits, if we collect more of the jurat affidavits than Maricopa, for instance, folks in Maricopa County, then Maricopa says we can actually win the entire election statewide. So let me break this down. Let's say in Maricopa County, there's 2 million voters. They're going to vote. 1.5 million on mail-in ballots, 500,000 on just election day. Okay. Now, of that 500,000, Maricopa is going to lie. And they're going to say, well, Trump got 52%. Biden got 48%. It was close. Trump won on election day a little bit, but it's not going to be enough to cover the margin for the state. Now, in reality, what's Trump really doing on election day? He's winning in a landslide because most Republicans vote on election day. So let's say it's really more like 70-30 on election day. Well, if you take that 500,000 votes on election day and say, okay, now let's just look at Trump voters. Whether you're a Democrat, independent, Republican, how many of those are actually voting for Trump? Let's just assume there's 70% on election day. Well, 70% of 500,000, that's 350,000. Now, am I going to collect jurat affidavits on all those Trump voters? No. Let's assume I only get 80% of them. Well, that leaves me with 280,000 jurat affidavits proving how the people actually voted. Now, what's Maricopa going to say? Well, 52-48, that's only 260,000 votes. So you have Maricopa saying, well, Trump got 260,000 votes, but yet I have jurat affidavits being 280,000. So that's 20,000. That's more than the 10,000 that Joe Biden allegedly won statewide. So even as narrow as I'm going, focusing just on Trump voters, focusing just on election day, the margin of victory is so big that can actually overcome an entire state's win. So then when you walk into court, you're walking in court the day after the election. You're not waiting 2-3 years and fighting discovery battles. You're walking in, they say to judge, I've got 280,000 jury affidavits that prove Trump actually won the entire state. You got to force his hand. It's because these judges, they want to weasel their way out of every way to rule on the actual merits. I mean, watching the Kerry Lake case, they brought in Richard Barris. Richard Barris, smart guy, great pollster. He was saying, well, from his estimations, his sample size, he was getting between 20,000 to 40,000 disenfranchised voters. Well, the margin of victory was 17,000. The judge basically ignored that and said, well, okay, that's a great estimation, but I don't really have a good confidence to throw an election just based on that. Well, what if you had 20,000 people that said, I was disenfranchised? You actually have jury affidavits of 20,000 people that said, I was disenfranchised. That's more than the margin of victory. The judge can't ignore it. So I'm basically trying to take away all the excuses these judges uses and just take them away. Show what the real results are. Now, I call this basically voluntary transparency. I'm removing that secrecy that's been basically sabotaging us for the last probably decades or two. So one of the critics, let's see here. What else do you want to know about this? So I need to get the message out there because this idea doesn't interfere with any other election integrity solution that's already out there. So people that are cleaning the voter rolls, keep doing it. People that are fighting lawsuits to change the laws, keep doing it. This is a solution focused on election day that no one else is talking about. And it kind of shocks me because when I first started proposing this a year ago, 13 months ago, I had a lot of people say, wow, this is amazing because I've had that same thought. Why can't we just go right to the people and say, how did you vote? And no one's really ever articulated it. No one's and said, you're the first person that actually took it time, put it in a video and push it out there. Because I'm sure there's enough people that are watching this, they probably had similar ideas. Well, they're counting in the back. Why don't we just ask people how they voted? Well, this is how you do it. You can't just use an affidavit. Judges will ignore it. You have to use a jurat affidavit notarized by a notary to be admissible in a court of law. So this is the formal way, the proper way of doing it. What this also does is this garners massive public support. You got to pressure these corrupt judges to do the right thing. Can you imagine on election day, if after the next day, we have more jurat affidavits in the margin of victory? You have to get the public behind you. Even the independents or even the Democrats who didn't vote for Trump are going to say, well, man, they've got actually all these affidavits and they're actually to a real person, a real ID, a real address. We can prove our results are accurate. Whereas what's Maricopa going to do? Well, they're going to say, well, trust us. Trust us. Well, okay, I don't trust you. I've got documentation that has a voter behind every single piece of paper. So you're also getting this massive public support behind you to force these judges to do the right thing. But what I really also need is I'm a nobody. I'm just an average American who was pissed off watching these elections be stolen. And I'm this is an easy solution. I need champions like Donald Trump, Kerry Lake, people who have a broader audience than me to champion this, to push this forward. And I don't need to be the guy doing it. I mean, I'm giving everyone the solution. Here's how you do it. It's a simple piece of paper. It's a jurat affidavit. Follow the laws in your state. You can prove who actually won on election day. I need the people in each of these states to do it. So, if you're in Michigan, whoever's running in Michigan, they should be doing this. And this solution is nonpartisan. I mean, I don't care actually if you're Republican, Independent, or Democrat. Anyone can use this solution. I just want honest and fair elections. So that's kind of my pitch. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
I think we have to have, voter verification, and we should be able to check. And we have the ability to do that now, to be able to check actually by either generated numbers or something like that. But we really are going to have to take the accountability onto ourselves, because we all know they're not going to do it. I was part of an investigation that we did, and we verified that the machines in the state of Michigan were in fact connected to the internet, connecting every 15 minutes, sat on the log. And so that means that they can internally flip votes. We had Clinton Curtis on here. He wrote a program, And he thought they were asking him, he testified to Congress, they are rigging this thing in so many ways. It's not even it's not even comprehensible.
Every way you can imagine. Every way. It's not just one way, it's every way.
It is. And we have to, I like your idea. I think it's a great idea, because we are going to have to be able to substantiate the way that our votes count. Every one of us needs to get in the game. If we really say we care, then we have to get in the game and do. So how do they contact you, and how do they jump into this issue to do it locally in their area?
Okay, so they can go to my website, declareyourballot.com. You can reach me there. You can also go to my Twitter, declareyourballot.com on Twitter as well. Now the your is spelled UR because I had to shorten it for the Twitter rules. So you can either find me on Twitter, you can DM me there, or you can go to my website and contact me through there. But
where's the contact? I'm looking for contact here.
It might be at the bottom. But if you go to Twitter, subscribe. So if you subscribe there, I'll get your email. But you can also DM me directly on Twitter. But here's what I want people to know. Like, no one's coming to save you guys. The legislature is not going to do anything because, frankly, most of them are corrupt too. Yep, they're part of it. They're part of it. And I might offend people here. Even most Republicans are in on it.
Oh, you're in a perfect place to beat on the Republicans, because I am all the time. It's like, this is like to say the Republicans are going to save us. That's like saying, okay, Biden's been in office for like 5 million years, but yet he goes in to be the president, and we think that he's going to change anything. If we think the Republicans are going to change anything, we're completely wrong. They were not stepping up to make this an issue because you don't have to be too bright to see how they've cheated in the election, right? And we have not seen hardly a peep out of anyone in the seats making this an issue and holding our elections. It's an illusion. That they care is an illusion.
Exactly. Take your most popular candidate who you might actually like, and then ask yourself how many times they actually talked about election integrity. I mean, they might throw that word out, but I mean, when I look at a politician, I want to see them say the 2020 election was stolen, absolute stolen. Before I even
what are they doing? What are they doing? Nothing.
They're doing nothing, because even I have Republican friends, and they're even kind of surprised at what I'm saying. I'm like, you don't realize the Republicans are just as corrupt as the Democrats. You have to stop thinking them as D's versus R's. It's really the establishment versus the people. And they're establishment first. They care about their own pocketbook. They don't care about you. They'll tell you what you want to hear, but behind the scenes, they're going to screw you over.
Exactly. And I'm hoping that they're offended. I hope we offend all of them, because they are part of taking down this nation as they're illusion, because they're feckless, they're worthless, they're cowards. They are part of the problem. If they're not standing up and pitching an absolute fit over this, and not worried if they're going to offend anybody, but actually get down to business and do the right thing, then they need to just get out of the way and let the real adults step in place and fix this thing, because they're not going to do it. Correct. And I hope they're offended, because they need to be offended, because anybody that went along with this, and it's the legislature that has to approve the certification of the election. The entire legislature could have stopped this thing.
Yeah, they could have. They
passed it right on through to the Board of Canvassers, and they passed the buck instead of stopping this and determining that this thing was not going to get certified. And they just passed it along, go along to get along nonsense. They did nothing. They said nothing, and they let these policies go through. So who's the real fault here? It's the legislature that's at fault. And so absolutely. And I hope they're offended. They need to be offended, because they didn't do their jobs.
Well, no, what gives me a lot of comfort, though, is that, let's say the top, this ruling class, they're all corrupt. But if you look at middle America, most Americans aren't like this. Most Americans are law-abiding, honest people. They just want to, free and fair elections too. So you've got this massive majority. I'll even throw in, liberals and independents, because a lot of them want the same things that we want. They want honesty. Well, this America, we're a very honest country. It's just these ruling elites that are the corrupt. So we need to mobilize the grassroots to push these solutions forward. Now, like I said, the legislature is not going to do anything to help us. You need to help yourself. And I give you a way to do it. voluntary transparency. You have to declare how you actually voted. Now, some people are going to be scared and they don't want to do it. That's fine. But if enough Americans do this, you can beat the cheat. You can beat all the ways they rigged this. And there'll be no questions. You have the actual evidence the day after the election. So it's so simple. So I have a lot of people they're just average Americans like me. They hear the idea. They reach out to me and say, this is amazing. Why isn't somebody else doing this? And honestly, I don't know the reason either. Like, why am I the first guy that's really said, hey guys, this is pretty simple. Just use a piece of paper, declare how you voted, you collect more than the margin of victory, you win. No one else is really doing it. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. I did Twitter. I started about 13 months ago. I've been tweeting. I say, snarky little things there to help spread my message. It's gone to some very, I would say, big people in the election integrity movement. One guy in particular reached out to me recently, and I won't say who it is just for privacy. I don't know if he's going to do anything with it, but he actually reached out to me and we had a little discussion. But most of the people I've reached out to, they said, okay, this sounds interesting. I'll look into it, and then crickets.
So, I think that's the problem that we have, like, across the board with so many things going on in this nation, is that people talk, they have opinions, but they don't act. And it's going to take action for us to change things. We can't just sit on the couch anymore and grab our beer and sit on the couch and watch like afternoon football, Sunday afternoon football or something anymore. This has gone way past this. We have to get in the game and we have to act instead of watching this. And I think that the apathy that we're seeing out there is symptomatic of several things. People don't even know what to do in because they've been lied to so many times that they sit back and they wait and go, I don't know who to trust. I don't know what to trust. And the point being is, do something, do anything. If you have to change midstream and say, this isn't exactly what I thought it was going to be, that's fine. At least you tried something instead of waiting. And if it seems reasonable, and pray. God actually will show you every step of the way. If this is the thing he wants you to do, pray and ask him, how can I help? Should I do this? Should I be a poll watcher? Should I do this? That, how should I approach this? And he may have you go as an individual off in a completely different direction, just like you did. You saw something needed to be done. And as an individual just said, you know what? Nobody's doing this. I guess, I, Mark, am going to go ahead and give it my best shot in the way that I feel important, that through the knowledge I have, that this is what I can do. And I just applaud you for that, because that's exactly what it's going to take, is individuals seeing the chinks in their armor and saying there's an opening here. Maybe if we go in this direction, we can get in there and make some changes and or reverse it. I applaud you. I think it's a great idea. And I'd like to see, potentially, see this go.
So what I want from the people that are watching this, I do want a champion like a Donald Trump to basically carry this forward. So if Trump embraced this idea and he started talking about it to the people, game over. We win massively on election day. It's done. So I'm very frustrated that I haven't gotten to Trump yet. So people, talk to Trump, Kerry Lake, the other people who are famous in this movement. They need to run these in their campaigns. Whether it's them doing it directly or independent grassroots people, they're going to cheat on election day. Expect it. You better be ready. And this is the way to beat them. So get the message out there. Don't wait for me to save you. I showed you the solution. Get off your butt and go put this into action. Now, I'll spend my time consulting. It's all for free. I'm not charging anybody. One of the things about this solution is no money. There is no money in this solution. So people say, well, how are you going to get all the notaries to show up? Because you have to pay the notaries. No, you don't. I'm asking for volunteer notaries. So I don't want people to send me money. I don't want to form an organization that will be sued by Mark Elias, all these other groups trying to take you down. This is 100% First Amendment protected speech. I want the people to do this. So you can, on your home printer, you can print out your jurat affidavit and bring it with you. And then for the notaries, if we don't have enough notaries, go become one. Because look, if Donald Trump said, hey, we need more notaries to donate their time on election day, he'd get 10,000 notaries signing up to take the course, to pay the $100 fee, whatever it is, you become a notary. So on election day, you're ready to go. So this solution is no money. That might be why other people don't really like it, because there's no way they can grift off of it. But this is the way America can save yourself.
Well, you hit the nail on the head right there, because it's like I do the same thing. I do everything for free, and trying to give a voice to people who have been silenced, because that's exactly what's happening here. When I see organizations that have the first thing you see on their website is the donation button, it's kind of one of those things. It's a normal thing and a normal process to do. But all of and such. But if we can do things by an effort of individual effort, a group of individuals coming together just to take this country back and do the right thing, that would be like the dream world right there. Instead of having to pay other people always to do the jobs that we should be doing, and I think it's wonderful.
Exactly.
Well, do you have any other words about what you're doing and how?
So, I'm always willing to go on shows like this. I've also been somewhat controversial on Twitter. If you don't agree with my idea, I am not at all scared to go debate anybody about the merits of this idea. In fact, I challenge people constantly. Hey, if you disagree with me, I'll debate you. I'll do it publicly. You know what happens? Most of these people, they just go away.
Yeah.
So if you're the deep state, the smartest thing you can do about this solution is to ignore it. Because let's say they start attacking me with a bunch of bad press. Well, bad press is good press. So some of the people that have gone silent, I wonder if that's because they're smart and they realize, hey, if we start promoting this idea, it actually might take root and actually work. So it's up to you people. You got to do this. That's how we save our country. So don't sit on your butt. Take some action. I'm here to help out any way I can, but try to get to Trump, try to get to the main hitters who can push this idea forward.
That's awesome. Well, with that said, let's go ahead and I always end with a prayer here, and say a prayer for this nation, because we certainly have a hurting nation and people don't know what to do. There's so much going on that it's kind of like disorienting for a lot of people. They know there's something wrong, but they don't know what to do. So, dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Jeff, Josh, Jason, and Mark coming on today and sharing their knowledge and all the work that they've done. They're not getting paid for any of this. They just go through it, and they want to right this nation, and we want to have one nation under you, following your direction, your guidance to this nation. I ask that you would help people out there to know exactly what it is that you have planned for their lives, because you have a plan for each and every one of us. You've determined our steps every day of our lives, and we're thankful for that so very much. You've given us such a wonderful country, and brothers and sisters to worldwide that we can stand with, and a nation that has been truly just such a gift to us, that we could actually stand and have self-governance and individual rights, and based on what you had in the Bible. Truly, it's a system based on what you outlined in the Bible, and we thank you for that so very much. We ask that you would help everybody out there if they're feeling a little depressed, they're dealing with health issues or difficult things in their lives, to turn it over to you, to bring it to you, and see what you can make out of the difficulties in life, because you can turn them around into being something absolutely glorious. And I truly believe that that's exactly what you're doing to this nation right now. You're taking difficulties, hard times, things that we maybe don't like, some of the heartbreak of the things that we're seeing, and that you're going to turn it around into something absolutely wonderful and glorious. Thank you so much for being such a good friend to us. We want to be a friend to you too. We love you. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you for the time.
Your favor be with Mark.
Thank you so much for the time. God bless you.
Thank you so much. So here we go, guys. Go to BrandenburgGovernor.com, because I am the best non-conceder who has ever not conceded to the lying, cheating, rigged elections. And we are not going to go forward until we rewrite this 2020, 2022 election cycles minimally. I mean, we know that they've gone back and they were cheating before that. We have all the proof now. And we can't concede to these people that have stolen our voices, stolen our votes, invaded our every system we know. We've had every system we know compromised, because that's exactly what they've done. They've subverted the United States of America from top to bottom. And we're not going to let this happen. So you just join us. So there you go. So with that said, remember, God bless you. God bless all those whom you love. And God bless America. Make it a great day. Starts here. Get mentally tough. Realize it's going to take some people that are really tough to get in this, being unwavering, being above being paid off for anything. If somebody comes to you and promises you something that's some sort of a human weird trade, it's a no. It's a hard stop and a no. You have to stand on your own integrity, making decisions, even though things are accepted. Maybe the laws, the fake laws, the fake laws they wrote in. Realize that you may be the one that has to take the stand and say, yeah, they cheated by writing unconstitutional laws, mandates, or whatever. But that's where we have to say, but wait a minute. This is wrong. Even if they wrote it in to give us an ability to do something wrong, we have to have the integrity to say, no go. I'm not going to participate in that. And I'm going to shout from the top of the mountains and say, this is wrong. And that's what we need to do on every turn. So anyhow, have a great day today. Be your best self, because you know what? God cares about you and made you exactly the way that you are. So just turn to him and it'll be a great day. And we will see you, hoping tomorrow. So we'll have a nice day.